Welcome back to the Push to Pass F1 podcast. So, as you can see, today is a bit different because we're actually doing our episodes outside of our usual studio. I'm currently in my girlfriend's house, and I think, Reef, you're in your actual house, not your uni house, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm just in my normal bedroom.
So, this is probably how you're going to see us a lot now during the next couple of months and over the summer, just purely for the fact of university is pretty much finished, so we don't really need to be travelling in to where our usual studio is. But yeah, so we hope you enjoy this new sort of style of episode. Obviously, it'll be a bit different if you're listening on Spotify. If you're listening on YouTube, you'll see the difference. But yeah, so we are now using cameras, so you can actually see who me and Reef are and our dodgy current setups. But Reef, talking about F1, moving back to that, looking back on the weekend, I think it was a decent weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I thought we hit the nail on the head in our predictions, to be honest, about what the race was going to look like. It wasn't boring, but it wasn't like a firecracker or anything. But yeah, it was good. A few talking points as well.
Yeah, I think it was a lot calmer than I sort of expected. I expected it to be a bit more chaos and a bit more like drama. We saw some good battles. We saw some. To be fair, probably the most I would describe this as a race for the purists. This was very much a strategy decided race. There was a lot of controversy, which we'll get onto now. Really, at the start of the race is probably the biggest talking point from the weekend is that turn one incident between Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think Verstappen was potentially treated a bit harshly, or do you think that it was correctly sort of ruled?
I think it was definitely correctly ruled. He'd probably looked face value. It wasn't worth a 5 second penalty, but he knows the rules. Everyone knows the rules. Give up the position, and he wouldn't have got the 5 second penalty. It's a shame that the race was sort of kind of decided after that first corner. To be honest, um, that kind of sealed the deal in terms of who was going to win. I thought, and then that's the way it panned out. But I don't know. We always see Max try like push those boundaries, and I wasn't at all surprised that he tried the move, but it definitely wasn't on. Piastri definitely had position, so it's just one of those.
Yeah, I think the sort of coming together is really the nature of that corner. I saw a lot in the F2 sprint race. Gabriel Mini literally did the same thing like 4 times. The second someone slung one up the inside and he was going around the outside, he just cut the corner. And it's a really tight turn 1-2 complex, and you can sort of get away with taking to the runoff if you don't do a Max it. I think if Max had gone ahead but then down in towards the next couple of corners, give the position back to Oscar, I think it would have been a completely different story. But also I think Max sort of saw well, if I can cut this corner and get ahead and then just run away with it, I'm going to have so much clean air that I'm not going to be affected. So I think it was Max sort of testing his luck a bit to try and win a race which he probably didn't think he could win just off raw pace alone.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I think he was probably hoping as well that Piastri would get caught up with third, fourth, and fifth, and even if he was given a penalty, maybe he'd have enough of a buffer where the 5 seconds wouldn't have come into it. As for the actual time penalty, 5 seconds is harsh for what actually happened, but
What
that's
I
that's
didn't
just in the rules.
Yeah, what I didn't understand was Max was given a 5 second penalty, but Liam Lawson literally went off the track by probably not a quarter of a car's width and didn't like gain much of an advantage. He got given a 10 second penalty for it.
Yeah, for
It
that,
just
yeah.
there's something about track limits and going off track and gaining advantage and all this stuff and like forcing a car off track that I think F1 just needs a bit of common sense.
But for a matter that should be relatively black and white, it's always grey. Like there is
Oh
there
yeah,
is never just a set answer.
no, I would like looking at the Max and Oscar thing. I would much rather Max goes wide, cuts the corner, goes ahead, and instead of them going right, we've noted it, we're looking at it. Now we're going to give him a penalty. I'd rather them say straight away to Max, look, do me a favour, give the place back, or we're going to give you like a stop-go penalty to
Yeah.
remove. So then he doesn't just go, well, they're going to give me a penalty, but I've already cut the corner and I'm going to get clean here, so I'll probably make 5 seconds anyway. So I just want them to be a bit more, not ruthless, but make your like in football, if you cheat and you get given a penalty, you have like a bigger consequence of you conceding a goal. Obviously, they can't replicate that in Formula One, but I think if you just said to a driver, "Look, give the position back," or you have to do like a stop go or a drive through or something like that, it will
Like, yeah,
stop. It'll make drivers think, this bargaining chip that I have of 5 seconds, but having cleaner air, they're just not going to take that risk.
yeah, it'd stop them taking the piss, won't it? And I think that is what they need, but I don't think they'll do it.
No. Someone else who had quite an eventful weekend was Mr. Lando Norris.
Yeah.
Something we spoke about in our preview. I don't know if it was our preview or review, but we said that if Lando has like one bad result, it could snowball into a few on the bounce. And his qualifying is this year. I'm not going to call it bottling it, but he's feeling some sort of pressure.
Oh, for sure. The pressure's there. And putting it in the wall, first lap of Q3, it's, I'm not going to say it's inexcusable because things happen, but it really shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, especially when you know it's the first lap of Q3. Usually, that's never going to. Well, I would say 99% of the time, that's not going to be your quickest lap because of track evolution and everything like that. So you shouldn't be pushing that hard that you're putting your car on the wall when your teammate is not doing it and no one else is doing it. It, it
Well,
it's
yeah.
it's just not. You can call it not acceptable. I just don't think it's to the standard of which Lando should hold himself to.
I mean, it wasn't even a mistake, as in an actual driver error. It was just him pushing that limit. And there's no need to push those limits on top of the curbs like that in your first lap. You need a banker lap. And obviously, he wasn't given one, so he started 10th, and that just kind of dictated his race then, didn't it?
One of only 3 crashes we had this weekend. We had Yuki's FP2.
Yuki, yeah, Gasly and Yuki in the
Yeah,
race.
what an eventful weekend for Snowda. Another quite. I don't want to call it funny, but I am going to call it funny because it is funny. Lance Stroll has now the most Q1 exits in Grand
Oh
Prix
yeah,
history.
that quote.
75. How many Grand
Did you
Prix?
see his quote?
No.
His quote about if you put the two McLaren drivers in a Sauber for their whole careers, they'd have more Q1 exits.
So he's made 171 starts. Well, so he's entered 174 Grand Prix and made 171 starts, where he's gone out in Q1 75 times.
It's not a great return, is it?
And you've got to think the cars he's been in. His racing, like, obviously the Williams, when he first came into the sport, it was nowhere near going to get out of Q1 regularly. But then you look at Racing Point, they were comfortably one of the quickest cars in the midfield. Then you look at the Aston Martin in like 2022, 2023, even
Yeah.
2024, you were pretty much banking on them to get out of Q1. But to have, like, I think he took the record from K-Mag, I want to say, Magnussen.
That would make
And
sense, yeah.
like he's drove some awful cars. Like he had the Renault, and then he'd been in Haas the rest of the time. That's a car you expect to be out in Q1. You don't expect someone who's driven for Racing Point for Aston Martin to be having the most Q1 exits.
I said this to a friend actually. He sent me the quote, and I do not know what he's getting at. And I said the exact same thing. I don't think he's actually ever had the worst car on the grid, because even that Williams was that 17 and 18. I don't think that was the worst car then.
No, because that was sort of around the time when Toro Rosso were pretty
Yeah,
awful, weren't they?
yeah.
But he's making his case to stay in F1 harder and harder to sort of fight the battle
When he's
for.
coming out with stuff like that, I mean, I don't even understand the quote in general, to be honest. But there we go.
Yeah, like if if you put both McLaren drivers in a Sauber, they'd get the most Q1 exits. But
Why is Sauber catching a stray?
one, why is Sauber catching a stray? Two, why are McLaren catching a stray? Three, why are you comparing yourself to Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri? That's it's.
Clueless.
He's. I think he's a driver who is very scared. Well, not. I don't want to say scared, but he almost seems very in denial of his like ability on track.
I
And
think it's definitely denial, but that's what happens when you've got your dad in your corner,
that's where you go when your dad's your boss.
pretty
Any
much.
other major? I think the other major thing we can talk about before we do our drive gradings is that Max Verstappen lap in Q3.
Yeah,
Wow, his
insane.
Yeah, his lap, like that and the lap in Suzuka.
Suzuka. Yeah,
It,
which
it's just it's
it made
just
me think
such
about
good
it.
examples of how good of a driver he actually is.
And like what you said in the, I'm going to say it was the preview of Saudi could be a sort of similar track to Suzuka as in its stop start, and then you see Max pull off another wonder lap. It's just yeah, he's great. He is good.
Qualifying this year has stepped up, I think. Qualifying
Yeah,
seems
yeah.
like in years gone by, I can remember I was never really like bothered about missing qualifying because I always felt like there was always going to be positions always going to fluctuate in the race between like one or two places. But this year, I feel like you can't miss qualifying; it's that important.
Honestly, in some circumstances, the qualifying is better than the race.
Oh yeah, like we saw in the likes of like China and Japan, qualifying wins people races and wins people points.
For sure.
So let's move on to our driver ratings for the finished top 10 of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So in P10, Isaac Hadjar.
Yeah, I
Dis-
mean,
Disappointing qualifying, I'd say, but the VCARB does sort of seem to be going backwards in pace, I think.
yeah, I think that was to be expected as well as the season goes on. The development will, speed up for others.
Who's he outscored? So he's outscored not an Alpine. He's outscored both Alpines, both Saubers, both Aston Martins, both Hasses, and Lawson. So
He's
they've
beat his
named you.
teammate.
Yeah, Lawson didn't have the greatest weekend, but he's sort of where you'd expect him to be. And to be fair, I think people are already holding him to a really high standard for a rookie. Like if
I
you're
think so as well.
if you're saying 5 races in, a rookie's scoring, like he's expected to be high in the points. Well, not high, but like he's expected to be around P10 to P8. You've had a pretty good start to your career.
Yeah, and you can't really complain. I mean, he scored points. I can't say he really did much. I mean, I can't
No,
remember anything.
he got stuck behind both Williams, who were like pretty much just towing each other along. So
Yeah,
it was a bit hard for him in that sense. But you know, you could get. It's between an A and a B for me. I think
yeah,
he's.
that's fair.
I think if he had a better qualifying result, then he potentially could have got the better of the Williams. But I'd say a B.
Fair enough, I agree.
Not number 9. P9. Alexander Albon.
Back in the points.
Way big Albono. Did I say
Needed
he
to.
was? I think I said last weekend he was. Last week he was going to have a stinker this weekend. So where did he qualify? Because I think he went out in Q2, didn't he? Let me just get it up. Racing past Saudi Arabia. Qualifying results. Yeah, he went out P11. So it's not the end of the world for qualifying, but
Yeah,
I'd say,
I thought they'd have pace this weekend with the way that the
yeah,
car is. I thought
100%.
so, and he's P9. Yeah, he needed to steady the ship after. Is it two? The last two races, he's been a little bit
Yeah,
not as positive as the first two were.
yeah, the past two they're not going to be like a step back, but they just seemed like a bit of a hiccup, really.
Yeah,
I'll give him a B.
yeah, me too. I think that's
P
fair.
P8 Carlos Sainz.
Good
A.
race. That's what he needed. A. Yeah.
Qualified 6th, great lap. Put himself, within, God, 5/10 of the top 4,
Yeah.
which is,
The main thing is there was no mistakes this weekend.
oh yeah, he was squeaky clean. He worked
Yeah.
well with Albon as well to secure points for the team in that sort of closing stage where he just used the DRS to drag him along. So I don't think Williams have many sort of wrongdoings. And didn't one of us predict him to do well last weekend? I'm sure you said, no, I think we mentioned that if he had one good result, he can sort of build into like a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
run.
That was it. Yeah. That
So
rings
hopefully
bells.
we can see that now. P7, Lewis Hamilton.
Getting
Qualified,
bored of seeing him by here now.
qualified 7th, finished 7th.
It's just he had that ding dong with Norris, which
Yeah, he
was
schooled Norris a little bit.
he did, but it's just like a waste of time because you just know what's going to happen eventually. So it's almost
yeah.
like I'll just get behind him and try to get a tow.
I think that was all it was. It was literally how powerful the DRS was down that start-finish straight. He was almost like, if I let Norris by now, I can just get a good bit of tow and just survive
Yeah.
for another lap.
I mean, Norris nearly went into the back of him, mind.
Oh, yeah. He said he needs a brain operation to or a brain
Yeah,
transplant to adapt to the car.
yeah. Clearly, he's having trouble.
He's uh, he's not happy with that Ferrari car, is he?
No, but then again, is now the time where he needs to be getting results? Probably not. So is the pressure on him? I'd say not.
I can see Ferrari just abandoning 2025 and going straight to 2026.
I think that was the intention anyway. To be honest, mate.
Yeah, like because realistically, McLaren have got, well, in theory, on paper, McLaren should have 2025 tied down.
Yeah,
Or if, Verstappen, just being Verstappen, might be able to get himself in there. But I think if you're a Ferrari now, you're surely just looking for 2026 and just saying, look, we'll try and keep in the fight as much as we can for 2025. If we can get a P3 or sneak a P2 in the constructors, that'll be great. But ultimately, our aim is next year, and we're going to try and give a car which Lewis potentially is more suited to, and potentially give Charles a car which he can, you know, be more comfortable with and challenge more. Then I think that'll be their aim now, because I think they've just seen the start of the season and gone, yeah, fair enough, we haven't done enough, and this car clearly isn't working, so just wait for next year where we're potentially going to fight again.
yeah, most definitely. I agree.
Hamilton, I'll give him a C.
It's just yeah. I've
Yo,
agreed with you on every single one, to be honest. But it is like it's the most vanilla drive. I feel like that
it,
is about where that car lies. I mean, Leclerc had a great weekend, which we'll get onto. But I wouldn't say Hamilton necessarily underperformed, but he didn't overperform. He just kind of turned up.
yeah, I think he was literally just where probably
The car is.
probably where he just expected it to be. Um, P6, Kimi Antonelli. I predict him to be on the podium.
He did.
Oh, I'm all for
Uh,
predictions.
Interestingly, in that first corner, he also went off the track, but he gave the position up. So
Yeah, he was sort of in behind the melee, and then didn't he get? I think he overtook Charles, didn't he? But then he just gave it straight back.
which is yeah,
There was a few times where he was like he he was sort of on the back end of the gap which the teams were trying to feed like Piastri and Verstappen into for when they were making their stop. So he was really just sort of in his own race. And to be fair, P6, it's respectable. It's
it's it's a great drive for a
yeah,
rookie. He stayed out of trouble. Eventually, the goalposts are going to move, and people are going to expect him to get in the fourths and the podiums. But for now, it's his fifth race. Solid
qualified
points. I don't
qualif-
see a problem with it.
qualified P5, finished P6. There's not much more Mercedes are going to want from him, really, is there? I'll
No,
give him a B.
I'll give him a B as well.
P5, Jorge Russell.
Yeah, I mean,
And in
this is his lowest point score of the year.
Yeah, I want to say so. But
Yeah,
qualified P3 was literally a tenth and a half from pole. It was clear the Mercedes didn't really have the race pace of the cars ahead of them, of the McLaren and the Red Bull, and Charles just drove a great race. So Russell just did seem to sort of fall away, but P5, it's still him picking up consistent points, and it's still him, just chipping away at what has been a really good start to the season. I don't think there's meant much more he would have expected. I don't think, look, he would have loved to have grabbed a podium, but it's gone away from the sort of track like Bahrain, which is more of a slow speed contract, and it's gone back to the medium speed, where obviously the likes of Red Bull and McLaren are far clear of Mercedes. So yeah, I think it was it's similar to Antonelli, but he hasn't really done anything wrong. It's just he hasn't really done anything major. I'll give him a B.
and I'd argue as well that these sorts of drives are not championship drives, but to create a good campaign, sometimes you have to cut your losses. And this weekend, they've not had the pace. He had a great qualifying lap. He gave himself the best chance he could for a podium result. It didn't work out, but he brought the car home safe. He didn't try too hard. He didn't put it in the wall. So for that, I'd give him an A.
Yeah, 100%. He could have easily have gone chasing after, or he could have tried to fight the likes of Norris a bit more, made contact, and then finished, ninth, 10th, or even out the points. So, like you said, P5 like this, it's not what wins you a championship, but it's good results to have in your bank. And I think Russell and Mercedes would be happy leaving Jeddah.
Yeah,
Um, P4, Lando Norris. This is gonna be an interesting reading.
I just I just don't know what to say because it's the same thing every week with it's disappointment.
Yeah,
It just
it's
is. It's nothing but. I don't know what I could say that's nice about this weekend, because I text you after qualifying and I said that he's put it in the wall, but he'll get driver of the day because he'll have a recovery drive to P3 or something. So you can applaud him and say, "Oh, great, he's made up positions. He's rescued his weekend. He's got solid points." But he put himself in that position in the first place, and he shouldn't have done. Like, he shouldn't be doing
and
that.
and also he started 10th. P9 and P8 took each other out, and then he had to overtake Hamilton, Sainz, and Antonelli.
Yeah,
Like, their cars and McLaren should come. Don't get me wrong, the his sort of strategy was really good. The way he managed his tyres, he was able to keep up with the leading pace for way longer than the early stoppers. I think him and Charles did like 34, 35 laps on their first stint, which took them the majority of the race, and they gave him a huge tyre offset for the last closing stages, which really helped him. But, you know, results like that in qualifying, you have to cut that out. That's not his qualifying performance is not a driver so far who's got 7 years worth of experience.
definitely not. This whole campaign so far isn't a year seven driver. It's
Like
just underwhelming.
if you look on the opposite side of the garage, you're expecting Lando's qualifying from someone like Oscar, who's only been, this is now his 3rd year, whereas you'd expect Lando to be having that composure to, even if he's not getting pole every week, as long as he's starting on the second row, as long as he's starting second, third, fourth, maybe, he's still putting himself within the fight for a podium in a race. But when he's qualifying in 6th, when he's crashing in Q3, it's just not good enough for a title challenging team.
Honestly, quite easily this year he could have not won a single race.
100%.
Quite easily, and that'd be a catastrophic failure.
But how weird is it when you look back at our review of Australia, how much we were like praising Lando, how everyone thought, he looks different to what he did last year, the way he kept his car clean, his qualifying, everything. Everyone was saying, what, he looks worthy of a world championship. And now it just seems to be completely flipped on his head.
This sport moves fast.
Rating?
D.
Yeah, I think it'd be fair. If we were just doing qualifying, I think it'd be like CD.
Yeah.
P3, Charles Leclerc. I'm going to put out there early, A star.
Oh, really? Do you think it's
Yeah.
drive of the weekend?
Alright, comfortably.
It was impressive. Really impressive.
Because the pace he showed, especially in the closing stages, where he took it to Norris initially and then ran away from Norris, and then Norris came back, but he was able to keep Norris out of his DRS for the entire time. And, he realistically shouldn't be doing that in the car he's in. That Ferrari does not look anywhere near the car of a McLaren. And, he's proven why so many people hold him to such a high regard. He just needs that car where he can fight at the front. Like, say if, for example, he was in the McLaren this year, I have no doubt Charles would probably be well within a title fight.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's drives like this which give us Charles Leclerc fans like hope,
Yeah,
because I think
it's a
he's the most frustrating driver to be a fan of.
it's a heavy dose of copium. Not copium, hopium, isn't it? You
It
saw
is.
you see a race like this and you go, it's back. It's on. We're gonna see like Charles podiums every weekend, and then we'll get to Miami in like 2 weeks' time, and you'll be like P6.
Or
But
worse.
overall, and I have to say, Ferrari, they look good this weekend in terms of like their strategy, their pit
Strategy,
stops,
yeah.
everything. They had a clean weekend for one, which is really weird to say.
I thought strategy was really strong.
Yeah, I'm gonna give Charles an A star.
Yeah, I agree.
P2, Max Verstappen.
Uh, Great qualifying that.
Yeah, great.
And event
I
really,
want to say
it
great.
was a good race.
Yeah, his race pace was really solid. Oscar didn't really have an answer for him in the opening stint. Whether that was Oscar sort of buying his time and knowing the fact that Max had the penalty, so he didn't really need to risk anything. This obviously that side to take, but I think overall Max's pace looked quite close to the McLaren.
Yeah, it wasn't far off, but then you have to look at that first corner,
Yeah.
and then you have to say, did he kind of ruin his race with that penalty? It completely took the pressure off McLaren for that strategy stop. So then is like, does that affect his rating? I don't think it severely affects him because he outscored Lando again, which is what he needs to be doing.
Like, just let me check something. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, he's currently only 2 points behind Lando in the standings and 12
Yeah,
points off the lead.
it's
Like,
really not that bad.
no, and look, that Red Bull isn't great, but it's not a Sauber. It's comfortably probably second or third best car. People are very quickly to jump on the fact of, look, the Red Bull, because it's not winning by 20 seconds, is awful, which I think is just stupid. But Max made the most of what he had, and he without that turn one incident, he well could have gone on to win the race.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Um,
you don't know what had happened if the McLarens were under pressure.
oh yeah, 100%. Like there was, I would back Red Bull 9 times out of 10 to make a better strategy decision or a better call in terms of like two teams fighting than a McLaren would.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Spot on.
An A.
You beat me to it. I was going to say it this time because I just agreed with every single rating. But yeah,
Um,
that's what I'd have said as well.
P1 Oscar Piastri. Go on, give your rating before me then, so I don't copy you.
I think it's got to be an A star.
Oh, I've gone with an A.
Just because he didn't really do anything wrong. I can't remember him making any mess ups in qualifying. He just didn't produce as good a lap as Max, which
I
is
I
an easy
think
thing to do.
I think the qualifying is sort of just Max being a freak. It's
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
an
yeah,
it's to lose out on pole by literally 100th of a second. It's one of those things where you just turn around and go, yeah, fair enough. Like
yeah.
fair play. The person who is on pole has put in probably the lap of their life, and you've just got to accept it and try to put it right on the Sunday. Which, to be fair, he did. He struggled a bit with in the opening stint, whether he was just trying to hold back a bit because a lot of people complained about the dirty air, that sort of side of it. But no, I think he managed the race really well, and he's now 3 wins for the season, which I think we spoke about after the race. You said usually that helps you in the long run towards like the end of a season if you bank early wins and early points, which
Yeah.
to be fair, if we get to round 15, 16 and the championship's looking a bit tighter, he can be thankful for runs like this where he's making the most of his car and making the most of opportunities.
I'd say history shows in a competitive championship. If you look at like 2012, I mean 2021 aside because that was just a two horse race. But if you look at competitive championships, usually it's the people with three or more wins are within the hunt, and he's already got that within 5 races, and he's I'd say almost certainly going to win more.
I think
So
an
I
A
mean,
star.
yeah, yeah, it was a wicked weekend.
So let's go on to our biggest winners and biggest losers. Who's your biggest winner? I go Williams.
Williams is a good shout.
I think it's just because they've got both cars in the points. They're making like the cars that finished ahead of them are cars you'd expect to finish ahead of them. So they've comfortably gone best of the rest, picked up good points. Sainz has had a good weekend, so hopefully they can build on this.
I'd say yeah, that is probably the obvious answer, and the answer I'd go for if you hadn't said it would be Carlos Sainz because he
Yeah.
really needed this.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's a really good qualifying. It's a really good points, and as we said last week, this could snowball now, and he might not be out the points for the next 10 races. And if you told me that, I would not be surprised.
Biggest loser. This one's going to be hard because no one's really had an awful weekend.
Um, yeah, actually, I'll say Bortoletto,
And that was the name that came to my head because he nearly killed Alonso,
Alonso. Yeah, that was
his manager.
the moving and the braking was terrible. Like he
I,
clearly
I
didn't know he was there,
yeah,
but that was just
I think that
shocking.
was literally just a thing of Fernando got a double slipstream, double DRS, and was literally just missiling his way. And then Gabby was going to brake as if to be like, well, Alonso's not going to really be there. And then saw him last minute and was like, ah.
Yeah, but I mean, we
Your
spoke about
goat,
it
by the way.
already.
Your goat, by the way. Gabby Bortoletto.
We've spoke about it before, so I won't dwell on it. But out of all the rookies, he's shown the least, and I'd go as far as say he's shown nothing really.
He's not going to help with the
Um,
car.
No, he's not getting helped by the car, but I'm a little well, I'm a lot disappointed because I had high expectations. So
Yeah, I want
I'll
to see
put him
some.
as the biggest loser.
Um, I will go. Where did? See, I wanted to say Yuki, but he qualified eighth, so that's not even bad. I'll go Jack Doohan.
Yeah, that could have been his last drive in that car, and we don't know.
Qualified 17th, finished 17th. Was the sole Alpine, just didn't look anywhere near it. When Gasly qualified, like, where did Gasly qualify? Ninth. And probably would have scored points if he didn't get killed.
What a boring race for those engineers. Just thinking, oh right, we've got the part-time driver who's just keeping the seat warm. He's the only one left in the race, and he's just gonna plod along until he finishes.
Wow.
It's not great.
Poor Jack
Alpine,
Doohan.
bleak.
But anyway, that was our Grand Prix review for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. We don't have any racing this coming weekend, so we're going to do a bit of a special episode, which we're actually going to talk about after filming this. Probably talking about some certain driver moves involving some certain Max Verstappens and some certain George Russells, I think.
Eventually.
But if you have enjoyed this episode and you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you listen on Spotify, drop us a 5-star and a follow. It massively helps. I've been Max.
I've been Reef.
And this has been the Push to Pass F1 podcast.